And joining me now live in the studio is the man who announced the two deals, NBN Co-Head of Corporate Services, Kevin Brown. Kevin, welcome to the programme.
Good evening, Tiggy.
Well, two big contracts today. To the wireless deal first with Ericsson, a fast-track deal. But beyond the 93% of households that you're covering with the cable, 4% of Australians are going to get speeds of 12 megabytes. Now, can you guarantee that it will actually be 12? Because doesn't it depend on the number of users?
It does. However, this is a fixed wireless access network, and the difference is in a mobile network, you never quite know how many people are going to be dialing into the same base station.
So the promise to Tony Windsor that it will be a guaranteed 12 megabytes is not necessarily true, is it?
Well, we're going to engineer it to provide for the vast majority of people, and I do mean the vast and I do mean the majority of people, 12 megabits per second. There are always factors like weather that will interfere with the wireless network. But what we have said is we're going to put enough towers up so that the people who have a dish on their house to connect with aren't competing with other players that might come in. So this is a different network to a mobile network, and it's built and engineered to provide 12 megabits per second, and we expect to be able to do that.
That is, as I said, a very fast-track rollout. Is going to be completed by 2015. The cable, on the other hand, where we hear noises of blowouts, cost blowouts, it's a sensitive issue politically, but can you confirm that there are now talks of reducing the 93% figure down to 90% or even below that, and perhaps replacing that with the wireless network?
No, I can't confirm that because those conversations haven't gone on at this point in time. This is a 10-year project. Without doubt, over time, we'll continue to evaluate the options.
I noticed the government statement of expectation says a minimum of 90%, so there is a bit of wriggle room there, isn't there?
Sure, we did quite a lot of work, and what we did was looked at the cost of rolling out wireless and looked at the cost of increasing the amount of fibre. And there's a crossover point there, and we formed the view after a lot of detailed work that crossover point said 93, it was actually 92.78%, a little too precise for my liking, said that at that point it was cheaper to build cable than additional towers, because in wireless you've still got to connect the towers to fibre and bring it back to somewhere.
To the cable contract with Silcar, you say you were able to do this deal at the right price, I mean, largely because of the volume that you could offer them. Isn't the reality, though, that the risk allocation is very different under this deal? We
have changed some of the risk, and I said today and spoke to it, but it is a big deal, and the big deal gives us certainty, and there's three things that drove the price. I'll talk about risk in a minute. The second one was by making it a big deal and guaranteeing certain geographies to people. It meant that they weren't competing with other people for the same workforce. It also meant that the overhead costs, like a project manager, a site office, didn't have to be defrayed over a smaller number of premises. You could spread that cost, if you like, over a bigger number of places. As to risk, what we realised was that the risk of some of the elements of building this network were better left with NBN. The example I use is the Telstra deal. Assuming the Telstra deal transacts, we've reached agreement with Telstra about renting their duct space, and that's a deal we're already paying Telstra for, and we're going to manage the provision of that rather than hand it to Silcar. So
you're going to manage the risk of the Telstra infrastructure to be used. That is the infrastructure that's supposed to be fit for purpose.
That's the infrastructure we're talking about.
That's quite a big risk. I mean, there's between 110 and 140,000 kilometres of ducts, which could be in any condition, couldn't they?
Well, there's a reason why it's taken us a substantial period of time, and it has been a substantial period of time to hopefully conclude these negotiations soon.
But has that's affected the heads of agreement, presumably, that very issue?
Correct. We've worked through an enormous amount of detail. These documents are well over 1,000 pages long, the contracts that we're trying to enter into with Telstra, and we intend to enter into with Telstra. And that negotiation means that we're clear about what that risk looks like. In a sense, we're already paying Telstra for that. We didn't want to pay Silcar as well to manage that.
Now, Stephen Conroy says there'll be a big penalty for changing the deal. That protects Telstra. I notice one place the risk doesn't lie is with the NBN Co board, because the government in the budget has now indemnified the board. I understand that the board has sought blanket indemnities from government. Are they so panicked about cost overruns and things like that?
Well, I think that's a matter for the board to comment on, but having been intimately involved in the process of securing those indemnities, they're not blanket indemnities. What they are is an assurance around funding And there are two of them. There's insurance around funding, and there's what they call insolvency deed, which sounds like a really big problem. But because our project doesn't have a big balance sheet yet, we don't have a lot of money in the bank. Usually when a company goes to borrow a lot of money, they've got a lot of money in their balance sheet in the bank. We're starting from nothing, and what that requires us to do is give the assurance for the directors that by entering into the Telstra deal, they're not taking on these big bills but no balance sheet.
All right. Well, lastly, you mentioned today that Mike Quigley was on a holiday. You say no conspiracies, but there's talk of tension at the top. The head of construction quit last month, and of all the times to take off when you're signing these big contracts, you're just about to do the Telstra deal. It's very odd that he's not here. He
planned this holiday 6 months ago. He's tramping in Europe looking for broadband, as I describe it. And frankly, after 2 years of an enormously challenging task from commencing with one office, two people and nothing else, we're about to commence the full construction rollout of this network, and he's having a pretty well-deserved break. So we're not to expect you in the top job in 6 months' time? Not after the last 2 weeks. He's the man for the moment, he's the man for the job, and frankly, he's welcome to it.
Good on you. Kevin Brown, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.